What is going on, everybody, and welcome back into Barley Studios. Who's ready to continue with this awesome project? What, you may ask? Yes, we are continuing the sculpture of the From the Grave 3D Tumbler build. We have already sculpted a lot of the features of this project in Sculpey Original. It's one of my favorite types of clay, and of course we have already oven baked the lower portion of the tumbler. That encapsulated the entire metallic part of the stainless steel tumbler. This is a 30 ounce, I think it was like a beer mug of some sort. I can't remember the name of it. But what we're going to do now is we're going to begin the process of creating the topper. Yes, this thing is already weighing a ton and it's very massive, but as you can see here, I do have a smooth surface to work from, and we also have the key skull already sculpted in and baked. You can kind of see where we are at this point here with this zoomed out view. We already have the actual gravestone kind of silhouette square type shape with a taper towards the bottom. So it gets a lot thicker as it goes up towards the top of the gravestone. We also have the square block at the very bottom. We have the dirt foundation. We also have the arm breaking through that dirt. And then that, of course, will be accentuated with the dirt that we added later on in the process of creation. We also have this awesome cobblestone effect going out throughout the entire project here on the sides and on the back. And I included little skulls into that. We also have a large skull on the back. As I stated before, this is going to be the key for the top here. Now, of course, the individual who purchases this item, whenever that may be, does have the option to drink from the tumbler with just the acrylic top, the acrylic lid if they chose to. But in this situation, I'm going to create a display topper here. I'm really just going to start creating like display toppers so that although I do have it wrapped around a stainless steel base, majority of people who buy these types of tumblers, because they are at a higher price point than your average tumbler, and it increases you know, the time frame of creation, and the detail work that goes into these are just so much further beyond what you would expect out of a 3D tumbler in itself. So what we're going to do is here we're going to layer on the acrylic topper there. And then we're going to layer on 2 layers of aluminum foil. You can kind of see there that I did kind of trim the edges just to kind of keep things nice, neat, and tidy. And the reason I had to trim the edges of the aluminum foil before we started laying in this clay here in a very thin sheet-like manner, and then trimming that, is because I want it to have a seamless effect from the bottom, which is already baked and set in stone, as it were, and then to the top here where it's going to be more so raw clay until we get it into the baking process. So I'm going to go ahead and build up just a nice little thin but thick layer of clay here. It's at least going to be 2 or 3 millimeters deep. And it's just kind of just lay down a flat surface before we can add any type of aluminum foil build up in the middle of the project. Of course, make sure that your aluminum foil is really finely packed so you can reduce any kind of air pockets. Sometimes those air pockets can rise to the surface and then you have to pop them once you get it completely covered in clay. I also like to kind of go back and forth between aluminum foil buildup and clay, and that kind of gives it like a rebar and like a mortar type texture where it really adds a lot of strength to the overall project. Now, as you can see, we're still blending in a lot of the base layer here. I'm going to go ahead and scuff this up quite a bit here before we begin adding aluminum foil. As you can see, we are doing this on TikTok Live. So those who follow me on TikTok, I appreciate you stopping in and saying hey to me. My daughter is off to the side at this point in time. She's just kind of chilling, playing on her tablet. No art for her during this portion of the build. But it was cool having her in the studio, just chilling, hanging out. And then, of course, I'm talking to people on TikTok Live, explaining what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I'm going to do it, and where we're going to go from there. Now, I do want to incorporate something on the very top of the sculpture here. I was just playing with the idea. If I decided not to do it, then I could always remove that armature wire. But all I did is I added just a small loop at the bottom, and I'm going to put that underneath the aluminum foil and the clay as we build it up, and it will just keep it in place for the future addition. So as you can see here, we got quite a bit of aluminum built up here, aluminum foil. And I pushed as much of the air pockets out of that as possible. So I really condensed that down as much as we could. And what we're doing now is I'm just going to kind of start blocking in the general shape of the kind of taper. We're going to continue from the sides of the overall shape of the gravestone, and then we're going to continue up to a nice smoothed out peak. you'll start to see that as we continue with the process and as we build out that shape of the topper here. But it is a very massive topper. It's probably the biggest topper that I've made to date, and it definitely is its own sculpture even by itself. We're going to continue adding in more clay as we build out the shape, and I'm going to continuously come back and smooth that out with different types of tools until I can get the overall general shape that I like. I'm going to go ahead and get some more aluminum foil out here, and we're going to continue building up this shape of the topper here. I'm going to go ahead and start moving the aluminum foil to the center of that kind of dome effect. And then what we'll do is we'll just layer in more. You can kind of see I'm kind of demonstrating how I would like for the overall shape to be for TikTok viewers. And I'm just using some wood sculpting tools there to kind of really pack that down into like a type of like peak shape there. We're going to go ahead and start introducing some aluminum foil to the sides of that little peak shape. Anything that I can do to reduce the weight in a way. If this were to be one solid piece of clay, this thing would be absolutely massive, and any kind of knock or anything like that would topple this tumbler over. So I need to try to reduce as much weight as we can while also keeping the strength that we need. We're going to go ahead and cake that in. Now, but remember, we went over the existing aluminum foil a little bit with some clay already. So this is just like clay, aluminum foil, and it really builds up a lot of strength because the clay is kind of mushed between the outside edges of the aluminum foil texture, and it really does add a lot of strength to it. It's a lot of surface contact between the different types of mediums, and it really is going to give us a strong surface when it's all said and done. There would be nothing worse than picking it up and then dropping it, and then all of a sudden the thing shatters into a million pieces because it's not layered in properly, or just because there's a lot of air between the clay and the aluminum foil. And then, or if you were to kind of tap the outside of the shell after it's fully baked and cured, and you hear like a hollow sound, you just don't really want that hollow sound, because it's just asking for problems later on down the road. You want to have a nice solid structure, so that way if it were dropped or if it's knocked or dented or hit, you're not going to get that damage. There's no point in putting all the work into it if it's going to get destroyed. Might as well do it right the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and continuously roll out clay with my lasagna press there, and I'm just kind of blending this in here. Now, of course, we're still really just blocking it in, you guys. So as you can see, just the blocking in portion just takes a lot of time. And it doesn't have to be an absolute perfectly smooth surface on the sides, because we are going to do that cobblestone effect, but we really need to get the shape to where we need it to be. I'm going to do a little bit of carving here just to kind of smooth out the surface, and I'll take that clay and add it somewhere else, possibly on the back or the front. The back and the front of this topper are going to have like a little bit of a recessed, kind of like a recessed portion, so that it creates a lot of shadow, and then we'll build out the edges in the same kind of like the framing method that we use towards the bottom on the corners. So we'll continue that up to all the way to the very peak. Now, I had not planned this ahead of time, so as I sculpted this throughout this video and this process, I'm really just winging it, just going with the flow. If I want to add something, I'll just go ahead and randomly sculpt it and add it in. But as I get towards the later stages of it, I really kind of lock in different features here and there, and I'm like, ooh, I like that, and then it'll stay. Or if I want to switch things up or make it a little bit more deeper in the shadows, add a cobblestone here and there, it really starts to transform, and it kind of becomes what I have inside my head. I will also begin to use the silicone tip sculpting tool here. This is the larger size opposed to the smaller one. I'm just really trying to smooth out a lot of the areas while kind of just getting the general shape here. But I'll continuously go back to this just because it quickly allows me to smooth out like particular surfaces over like an inch or so. It really is great. You just roll it between your fingers and then let the smoothing tip do what it needs to do. You can also use that to push that conditioned warm clay up and around. If you were to wait overnight after you condition this clay and get it set in position, you really have to work it a lot more because that conditioned clay is already kind of set up and it's cooled off. It's a little bit more firm. So anytime you're kind of warming up clay trying to get a shape, just keep it going until you can kind of just get the general shape that you want. It really kind of saves time later on down the road. So when you're blocking it up, getting the general shape, see if you can do it all in one session. That way you can just save yourself some time as far as conditioning, adding details here and there. really kind of sculpting that out. I'm trying to make sure that it's a smooth surface, and at least for the most part. I'm also trying to get the overall shape as far as coming down to meet that aluminum foil seam between the topper and the base of the tumbler sculpture here. I know it's kind of a mouthful there, just trying to describe like the base of the tumbler, like the main tumbler, and then the topper in its own two separate sculptures is a little bit more difficult. Just because if you were catching this video, say without watching the previous videos, you look, well, he's already got all this other stuff sculpted. I will link the playlist in its entirety at the end of this video, and that will be linked at the end of all of the other videos in this series. And again, this is from the Grave 3D Tumbler playlist. If you haven't had the opportunity to go check those out, then make sure you go do so. It's pretty cool. I did a demonstration on how to create the cobblestone effect, or how I like to. And of course, we sculpted the breakaway hand coming up out of the dirt there. It's just kind of fun to put it all together. I did almost all of these sessions on TikTok Live. For the most part, I did do a little bit of detail work between the TikTok Lives, but I'm trying to make specifically TikTok Live creations where I'm able to share it specifically with live events. So if you haven't had the opportunity to check out one of my live events, make sure you make sure you follow me there. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you can know when I kind of schedule those out. I'm trying to do better about scheduling those live events over there on TikTok. Now, as my YouTube following grows here on YouTube, if this is where you're watching this content in its entirety, then eventually, as my following here grows, I will probably more than likely begin to go live on YouTube as well. I do believe that I will eventually, probably long-term, lean onto YouTube quite a bit more than TikTok, but TikTok is definitely growing by leaps and bounds. And if they were to begin to introduce horizontal landscape view recording for artists as they do for the gamers, then I'll probably lean majority, for the most part, onto TikTok itself. So TikTok, you're watching this, I'll probably link them below just so if they watch this, then they'll know. You need to create a horizontal view for artists. That way, if I want to access any of that recorded data, then it's already in a horizontal mode instead of a portrait mode, which is almost useless to a lot of us who want to save that content and reuse it. Those who make content understand what I'm saying as far as using the same content and kind of mirroring it to other platforms, but also not having to go out of your way just to record with 4 or 5 different devices just to achieve what you need to on all the platforms. So what we're going to do now is I've got the one side kind of blocked in here. Now, it has a little bit more shaping to do. Yes, it does. But for the most part, because we're going to do a cobblestone effect, we can be very, very light with how we sculpt it, at least until we get down to the details of the corners on the front and the back. You can kind of see the back corner right there. That's the front corner. Is not fully sculpted. I haven't even blocked it in truly yet, but the back part is already blocked in there. So we're going to go ahead and continuously add in the cobblestone effect, those little medallions of clay that we're cutting out there. They're all the same thickness, so there's no variety in those thicknesses of clay as we apply it. We will add more to individual cobblestones as we get to the actual detailing process. We're going to go across the front as well, and we're going to go ahead and work those cobblestone effect all the way up. Now, I did want to do something with the eave, the very top peak and the eaves of the sculpture here. I really wanted to incorporate some kind of cross. I ended up just doing a nice circular even cross instead of like having a longer portion on the lower portion of the cross. But I wanted to incorporate that in. So here in a little while, I'll come back. I'll cut that very top peak off, and I'll kind of shape that a little bit more, and I'll add a cross there. But we'll get to that here shortly. Here we are going ahead and using the smaller silicone tip tool, and I'm beginning to blend all of those little mortar joints between the actual cobblestone effect. We're going to go ahead and add quite a bit of material to particular cobblestones here and there, and these will be the actual skulls that were to continue up and around the large skull on the back. Just remember that this is the back of the sculpture, not the front, and we're going to go ahead and try to incorporate some of those details in so that way it feels like one complete sculpture instead of 2 separate ones. And we need to continue that pattern up and into this part of the build as well. if the pattern were to end specifically at the seam, then I feel like it would just be too obvious, and I want to keep that from happening. Adding a little bit of that mortar stipple texture with the ball stylus tool here, and I'm switching back and forth between an ultra small one and then the medium size dimply tool there. Add a little bit of those dimples here and there very sporadically, just kind of giving it some dimensions, a little bit of texture there. A lot of that probably will not survive a lot of the painting process, but if I were to go over those mortar joints with a light gray or a dark gray, then a light gray, and then do like a wash, then it will definitely bring out a lot of the details if some of that stippling texture were to survive the painting process. So as you can see here, we're really starting to make process now, and here in a moment the camera is going to jump. So now I'm going to begin blocking in the front. I can't continue with the cobblestone effect on the side until I get the corner here blocked out. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing as we did for the back, and we'll block this in with a bunch of clay. So I'm just rolling out little rolls of clay, kind of smoothing them in, blending them in where I need to, and then we'll use the same scraping tool just kind of to define those as we build this out. You can really see the cobblestone effect as it starts to blend in. It's really starting to come along, and it's really starting to look good. Now this is the front of the cup. As you can see, it's the RIP on the front of the gravestone there, with the rotting hand that's breaking away from the dirt. And I wanted to make sure that this portion is kind of inset into the very front of the gravestone here. So we're going to add some of these little cuts of clay here that we similarly which we used for the blocking in process on the lower half there. That is also how I did the actual arch on the front of the RIP gravestone there. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of taper those, kind of sculpt them in, blend them into the existing concrete or mortar base there. And then I actually come back here in a little while and I add even another layer of these little braces here, just to give that front even more recessed look than it has now. I wanted to create a lot of shadow there, a lot of dimension, and by having that kind of fading into the object there towards the top, it really applies a lot of dimension to it, and it keeps it from being all of the same shape. As this comes to the front in my mind, it will begin to make more sense as we get to those later processes. So we're just using a wire cutting tool here, and I'm just kind of smoothing that out, taking away particular areas where I feel like the buildup was too big, or just add a little bit too much clay here and there, and we're going to reuse that along the edges just to kind of fill in the side. If you caught it just a moment ago, there's a little bit of a divot there. I'm also using that to kind of shape out the mortar joints of where the seam for the topper and the base are. You can't have too much buildup there. You need to make sure that they look like they're blended together perfectly, and then that means that I need to bring this overall profile of the cobblestones down to meet the part that's already cured and baked. I hope that makes sense, you guys. But basically, you want to make sure that this seam is less noticeable because all of the cobblestones are on the same level. And they're not like sitting out an extra like centimeter away. You can see here how they kind of blend in, and it looks like you really can't see that seam unless you're looking for it. Now, of course, obviously, you're going to see a little bit of a seam. Let's not act like you won't. But when this topper is on here, unless you're truly looking for it, or I were to paint that like a really dark Mars black or something between those two seams, hopefully that will kind of blend in. And the way you can really achieve that is if you paint it all together. So the actual bottom of the topper and the top of the actual base will probably just be a pure black, maybe with a little bit of the same gray texture that we use for the rest of the build, or some dry brushing. But because it's such a smooth surface between the two objects, most of the detail work is going to be on the outside of the item. We're really starting to get a really great cobblestone effect here. As you can see, we did jump camera here into the future where I had all of these kind of sculpted in and blocked in. It really is starting to take shape there. You can kind of see how I did come back and add a little bit more bracket around the eave of the top there. And I also incorporated the cross here. So let's go ahead and jump in here. I want to show you how I created this little cross effect. It's very super simple. I went ahead and just rolled out two clays, squared them off, cut them, and then I continuously cut down the four corners until it fits in the circle. I really hope you are enjoying this process. It's really fun to put these videos together, and I do enjoy kind of just putting it together in a laid-back fashion. I know I've stated it before, I really don't have my nice professional black background that is less distracting as my actual workstation here and all my shelves with my geek stuff sitting on them. But I really do like being laid back and not have to do like a super ton of editing on these videos or go out of my way to make sure that I'm always definitely having the right stuff in the background or the right color or a clean black background. It's nice to be able just to be free with it and just have fun and worry less about the aesthetics and just have fun sculpting and creating, right? So I'm doing this the same as I did the way before. I went ahead and added just a small roll of clay to the actual peak of the topper here. And that's actually just a very large node there. So I will go ahead and cut some of that down in a few moments. But I decided to come in and add one more layer of textured angled framing. Let's say framing to the outside eave of the topper here. It's going to create a lot of shadow in that recess there. And then when it's all said and done, it's going to look really cool. Kind of getting that layered in there, and if I need to take a little bit of away, I can. What I'll do is I'll cut this at a tapered angle here. Now it will create a small divot there, but I'm completely okay with that. I'm not worried about that in any way. And then what we'll do is we'll use a silicone tip sculpting tool to blend this in, the same as we did before. I'm not minding a little bit of a divot there on the angle there as it blends to the bottom there. And we'll use the X-Acto knife to kind of etch those edges off and make sure that they're level there. Looking pretty good. We're going to do the same thing to the other side in a little bit of a time lapse here. We'll cut that at a right angle there, or tapered angle. And then we'll go ahead and blend that in. Blending it in does take a few minutes just because I don't want to see that seam. It needs to look like and feel like it's all one piece of mortar. Looking pretty good, you guys. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this project so far? If you haven't hit the subscribe button, make sure you do so. Your subscriptions and the amount of time y'all watch my videos is really what's fueling me. My goal here is to truly become monetized and really start to push into the YouTube sphere. Now, you know, if y'all watch a lot of my videos and content, I'm not one type of artist, and you're not going to find just one type of art on my channel. So if you're looking for just tumblers or just canvas work or just UV resins, you're not going to find one thing. So one week you may see me working on a canvas, the next week you may find I'm working on a sculpture, the next week I may be working on a tumbler. And it really kind of switched things up a bit, and it keeps me entertained in the studio because I'm making a bunch of different things. It also keeps you guys entertained, so maybe you don't like to see the same thing every week. Maybe you just want to see what kind of fun projects I make or anything like that. So I hope y'all enjoyed my overall creation process and the fact that I'm not in just one niche here on YouTube. My name is John Byerly Studios. That way I can keep it open-ended. It's not John Byerly Tumblers. It's not John Byerly Canvas or Painting. It's Studios, so I can do anything that I want. Cutting down the edges of the cross there, and we're going to make sure that fits into that circle, and we're going to do a light blending with a silicone tip tool just to kind of get it blended into the edges and make it look like it's one poured piece of concrete. Looks pretty good, you guys. What do you think? I really do think it looks good with those raised edges right there, and I really do think it's going to create a lot of shadow there. Now, of course, some of that shadow will come from the painting process, but it's really cool to add these in. Pretty cool. All right, so to top off the topper here, of course, I do have a little bit more detailed work on the actual cobblestones on the top. That's fine. I'll do those off camera. It's just something small, same way as we did on the sides of the main actual base tumbler. What we're going to do here is I created like type of a shingled effect here. You can kind of see I made one large piece of clay, and then I just slowly tapered each layer in towards the center there. And we're going to kind of blend that over just a little bit, make sure that they stay defined there. And it's just giving us a little bit of a kind of like a tile effect. and this just kind of breaks up the top. It makes it not look so boring. It makes it look like it's like an ornate pedestal or an ornate gravestone that you might actually find in a graveyard. I'm going to apply a little bit of detail work here, texturing and the sculpting and blending just a little bit, and I'll also give that a little bit of a concrete texture with the sandpaper as well, right before we get ready to actually bake this thing. As you can see, our kind of armature wire is still sticking up there. Yes, what are we going to make? You will have to wait until the next video to find out. If you follow me on TikTok, you may already know. I do have an awesome TikTok short and YouTube short to release as I release that video, so you may see that here soon after one of these videos. Just remember that I am going to link the playlist to this entire build all at the end of the video here, so you can definitely click that, go into the playlist, and you can nitpick over which segment of the build you'd like to see. If you want to see how I made the cobblestone or the skulls or anything particular, it is always available to you at the just a click of a button. So as we go into the glamour shots at the end of this video, I hope y'all really did enjoy it. Again, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like notification. Leave in the comments, what do you think is awesome about this project? What projects would you like to see in the future? More horror, canvas, tumblers? Let me know. I really do hope y'all enjoyed this, and you may see a snippet of at the very top of the tumbler of what is coming in the next video. Again, thank you for all you do, guys. I really do hope y'all enjoyed my content here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow me on TikTok, and I will catch you guys on the next part of this awesome From the Grave 3D Tumbler. Later.